All right. I am State Representative Todd Stevens. I'm the chair of the Pennsylvania Commission on Sentencing, and we are here for the August 31st, 10 a.m. Public hearing via Zoom. So this is a really novel and frankly exciting thing that we're doing here today. So we're conducting this hearing via Zoom, and we are reaching out to 4 of our state correctional institutions to ensure that folks in those institutions have an opportunity to present their thoughts, feelings, concerns regarding our upcoming amendments and changes to the sentencing guidelines. And I think this is just a great opportunity for the commission to really hear from those that are personally impacted by the work that we're doing. So I'm looking forward to today. I want to start off by thanking our Executive Director, Mark Bergstrom, and the staff at the Department of Corrections, because this is a Herculean effort to be able to connect via technology. I'm in Montgomery County. I see some of our members from Philadelphia and York County and Dauphin County, and Professor Mystic out in the western part of the state, and then our 4 correctional institutions all connected here technologically. So I'm sure that was an unbelievable task, and I appreciate the work that you all did to coordinate all this. Before we go any further, what I'd like to do is just maybe have the other members of the commission that are on the call introduce themselves.
Morning, Judge Tucker, Philadelphia County.
Thanks, Judge.
Good morning, Dave Sunday, York County District Attorney.
Thanks, Dave. Doug, I think you might be up next. Although we may have lost you. Is Attorney Marsico? You're frozen on my screen. Oh.
Marsico, defense attorney.
All right, terrific, thank you. And are there any other members of the commission that are on the call right now? All right. Well, with that, Mark, as Executive Director, do you have anything that you wanted to start off with before we jump into the testimony?
Sure, just a little bit of background. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. As the chairman stated, this is the 3rd hearing we've been having on proposals the commission adopted and published, but this is the 1st hearing we're having on proposed parole guidelines and recommitment ranges that both deal with state parole. These are the initial guidelines. The commission was required by legislation to create both the guidelines and recommitment ranges, and these are the initial proposals that we have out for public hearings. The proposal was adopted, or the proposals were adopted June 4th of this year and published on July 11th. As the chairman said, this hearing is focused on receiving comment from individuals within the State Department of Corrections, the state correctional institutions, and we have a 2nd hearing scheduled for September 9th, beginning at 2 o'clock, also by Zoom, which we will receive more comments from the general public. And so we look forward to that. In addition to the members that the chairman mentioned, I'll list some other members that I think will be joining us throughout this hearing. They include Representative Joanna McClinton, Senator Sharif Street, and the chairman of the Pennsylvania Board of Probation and Parole as an ex officio member, Chairman Ted Johnson. And I believe Professor Mystic, our counsel, is with us as well. We have more than 50 people registered to observe and listen to the comments today, but the questions and the comments will be reserved, the questions and responses will be reserved to commission members and the comments received from individuals in the DOC. And then final comment I have are about the 2 proposals before the commission. The first proposal on proposed state parole guidelines really focuses on on following through with the mandate in the legislation about creating the guidelines. So the guidelines try to follow the statute in terms of what's supposed to be included in the guidelines. And they focus on two primary factors, risk and preparedness. The second, the recommitment ranges, again, try to follow the requirements of the statute. And they look at two different categories of recommitments following revocations of parole, those for technical violations and those for new convictions. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chairman, and we can start the hearing.
All right, thanks so much. I certainly appreciate that, Mark. Before we get going with the hearing, do any of the commission members have anything they'd like to say or offer before we get started with the testimony?
Not at this time.
Good morning, Chairman. I just wanted to acknowledge that I was here earlier, but I was as a webinar guest. I don't know what happened, but this is Representative McClinton. So good morning to the entire commission, to the gentleman who will be testifying, and to all those who are joining as guests. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Representative McClinton. We appreciate it. And all right, we'll get moving here with the testimony. I was going to go, Mark, if it's okay with you. I don't know if the DOC staff was on the same page in terms of the order that you sent me, starting with those in Cole Township, SCI Cole. I figured we'd start with them and Mr. Lee, if that's all right. Does that work for you, Mark, and the staff as you've set it up there?
Sure, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So David Lee, who is at SCI Cole Township. We'd love to hear from you, and it's your opportunity to address the Commission on Sentencing. Mr. Lee?
Okay, Cole Township should be able to unmute. They'll have to do something on their side, though. Okay, we can hear you now.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I want to open my remarks by saying thank you to the Cole Township Administration, Central Office, the Pennsylvania Commission on Sentencing, and all other entities who are involved with this process. Thank you for allowing incarcerated human beings to participate in this momentous procedure. I've been incarcerated for over 32 years, and before the pandemic known as COVID-19, I spent much of my time in the Cole Township Law Library where I work. Throughout the course of time in which I have worked in the law library, I have listened to the passionate cries of incarcerated human beings who have received parole hits after meeting all the necessary requirements of the institution. Often they have received lengthy hits, which prevent them from reconnecting with their families in a meaningful fashion. Many of the cries I speak of today come from people who are conscious of the mistakes they have made in their lives and understand the need for accountability for the harm they have caused. However, they have done a lot of the internal work necessary to transform their lives and have demonstrated their transformations as they move throughout the institution on a daily basis. These people I speak about are now positive human beings who assist others inside the institution on a daily basis. They do so because it's in their hearts to be good people. Now these transformed human beings wish to share their current state of awareness with their families and communities. Sadly, I am incarcerated for committing a violent offense, but I too have spent a great deal of time doing the internal work necessary to transform myself away from the criminal mentality. For many years, I've worked with other human beings on projects designed to assist the local community and communities throughout Pennsylvania. We have engaged in all types of charitable work, which have allowed us to help people in need. We have done mentoring work to assist our peers with their development and transformation as they seek a higher understanding. Yes, we were once the people who caused harm in our communities, but we are no longer the same people who entered prison many years ago. And we would like for people in society to see the transformations that we have made in our lives. The juvenile life is our primary example of what redemption looks like and what I am now referring to in a broader sense. Because at one point, they too were doomed to spend the remainder of their lives in prison. However, legislative changes have breathed a second chance at life into their lives. And now, hundreds of them are setting wonderful examples of what is possible if only provided with opportunity. Last, we understand that parole is not a right, but you possess the power to provide many of the incarcerated human beings coming before you with a privilege, which many have worked hard to receive. We're living in some dire times. We're in a place where COVID-19 has become a daily reality. Now more than ever, we understand how precious every moment which we're allowed to spend with our families truly is. With that, I'm asking that the Pennsylvania Commission on Sentencing recommend that if an incarcerated human being meets all the requirements put forth by the institution, that they be paroled to their families and communities. The offense gravity score appears to be a mechanism to give a person more time outside their original sentence. Therefore, incarcerated citizens should be allowed to serve their original sentence and return home. Moreover, only the most extreme circumstances should lead to a citizen's recommitment. We also need more resources placed into treatment and rehabilitation, which will lead to the healing. Punitive measures do not heal hurt people. Treatment does. And most people respond better to treatment rather than more punishment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I know that, speaking for myself, and I think I'm speaking for the members of the commission, your sentiments there about treatment and rehabilitation are critically important and something that we do need to spend more time focused on and ensure that those resources are in place so that we can get folks into treatment and rehabilitation so that we can return them to a meaningful crime-free life outside of the institution. No question about that. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and provide your perspective on things. Do any of the commission members have any questions of Mr. Lee? No? Okay. All right, Mr. Lee, thank you very much for your testimony. We really appreciate it. And we'll move on to Keith Morrison, who's also at SCI Cole. Mr. Morrison?
Yes, how you doing today?
I'm great.
Good
Thank
morning.
you so much for joining us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. We can hear you
Okay,
as well.
so
And the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I believe the idea of your proposal is number one, safety for the community. Number two, how to responsibly handle the recidivism of those who are coming back parole violators. And number three, change and rehabilitation for the inmates. This was the sort of conglomerate of your proposal from what I saw, the ideas that I loved as well. Are we sort of on the right track here?
Yes, I think,
Hello?
yeah, I'm sorry. I had to unmute myself so that I could speak. I'm sorry for the delay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's generally, I think you've encapsulated it very well.
Okay, so first let me say that I'm extremely honored and thankful for the opportunity to be in front of this commission today. My comment is derived from your second proposal, page 7, paragraph 9, order of service of sentence. I believe the parole board, instead of separating itself from the court system as a separate entity, should make more strides to rather work with the court system, especially with concerns to the parole violators. Coming from personal experience, there could be a situation where the courts may sentence a parole violator to serve their new adjudicated sentence concurrently with any back time and or parole hit as an actual stipulation for plea agreement. And so the parole violator accepts this agreement only under the basis that their new adjudicated sentence will run concurrent with their parole hit. And yet, when the newly adjudicated parole violator is actually committed to the DOC, the parole violator is told that parole law supersedes sentencing law, and that, for lack of a better term, our plea agreement is breached. I believe that something needs to be done about that. In reference to Act 122, I would also like to comment and possibly propose a no-hit clause to go alongside the recommitment range as proposed here. Basically how it would work is if due to a violation, an inmate would have to recommit, he or she could be afforded the opportunity to complete his or her back time and or new adjudicated time, and as a reward for excellence, not have to be necessarily subject to a parole hit at all, especially if the violation has a low gravity score of possibly 1 to 9 or 1 to 8. My final comment is attributed to parole as well. Although I am not a lifer myself, I do believe that there should be some form or means of parole instituted for the lifers. In your second proposal, page 7, paragraph 6, judicial proceedings, it states that all offenses for which the offender is convicted are pending, including violent offenders, page 8. And so I believe that inmates as a whole would be much more susceptible to accept all parts of your proposal if the ideas previously mentioned are at least looked at, and last but not least, if it applies to everyone, including lifers. I would also like to say that, in my opinion, by and large, prison is not a place of change, of intellectualism, or rehabilitation. Prison is a place of crime and punishment. As I read your proposal, although I like the ideas, the integrity of the proposal to me was ineffective. I could literally take this mask and color it green or blue or yellow. And if I put it back on my face, it would have done nothing for me, the person who's wearing the mask. It was a reformation of simply a mask. I feel as though if justice is what we truly seek, if we truly are seeking to abolish crime and to stop crime and reap justice, then what we need as prisoners, as people, is knowledge. Knowledge is the only tool that will help us and that will take us out of the imprisonment of our own enslavement. I don't think we need new rules and regulations to abide by, but what I do think we need is locations and places to go after we are paroled. I think that what we need is new communities and new systems within the parole system, and that we also need new tools while we are in prison to work on economics, to work on things such as bringing the awareness back of what we do, to work on things such as violation, to work on ourselves. So I believe that, in my opinion, the proposal was okay, but it was ineffective. The integrity of it, the character of it was ineffective. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Could I just maybe dig into that a little bit if I could? What do you think would help render it more effective? I mean, what do you have any specifics? I know that there's a number of programs inside state correctional institutions, opportunities to get GEDs and further education in that way. Do you have any specific recommendations for things that we should consider in terms of providing more substance here along the lines of the direction we're trying to head? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll state that, but I will also like to, if it is required or necessary, I would love to take down an address because I can send you more. But just to give you a few bullet points, I think that rehabilitative programs that focus on perspective, character, and transformation for parolees on the cusp of being set free. Also programs geared towards, as I said before, and I'll reiterate, economics and money management. Or how about bringing back the institution of college? Actually receiving college credits. So when we go home, we can sign up for college and we can actually have the credits. Or the boxing and basketball program of the 90s, which teach teamwork and camaraderie. These are a few programs that I would like to see come back. No disrespect, but to be honest, the programs that are already in here are, as I said before, just on the surface. If you do this, you get that. These are things that we already know. And I'm not trying to take the responsibility out of our hands because we are grown men. But at the same point in time, if you have the authority and you have the power, I believe that you can also implement your authority and your power to give us more awareness of how to basically go about society, because a lot of us haven't even left Philadelphia, have never left the streets of Philadelphia, or have never left the borough of where we're at in West Philadelphia or North Philadelphia. A lot of us have no sense of economics, no sense of money management, no understanding of it. A lot of us have coming from broken homes and things of the sort. So I would much more like to see prison as a place of rehabilitation, to rehabilitate somebody, instead of just being a place where you're housed and you could become a better criminal or a worse criminal, in my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, I know my goal is to ensure that, you know, we're rehabilitating folks and again, preparing them to return to the street and be productive citizens. So I appreciate the feedback and the input there. Any commission members have any comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Judge Tucker. Mr. Morrison, I sincerely appreciate your thoughts. I think it's something that perhaps should be looked into to lay a foundation so that when inmates are released, they could be further along in their endeavors as opposed to starting from scratch, starting from the very bottom. You mentioned the term a no-hit clause. Explain to me what you meant by that.
Well, what I meant was when we come back to prison as a parole violator, excuse me, you automatically get a hit. Whether it's a 6-month, 9-month, 1 year, 2 year hit, that's to the discretion of the parole board. So what I proposed was a no-hit clause would mean that although I am a violator and I have come back to prison, the hit would be based on if I met the necessary purposes of the programs provided, if I've stayed out of trouble, out of the hole, and if I have shown excellence, whether that be judged in a way of helping my peers or however it may be judged, that I won't necessarily have to receive a hit, a 6-month, 9-month hit. Now, I would come back to prison and I would have to finish my time, but I wouldn't have to necessarily put more time on top of more time on top of more time. That was basically the clause that I proposed.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good.
Anybody else, any other commission members have any comments or questions? All right, Mr. Morrison, thank you very much. We appreciate the feedback and the insights.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we'll move right down the list here that Mark prepared and go to SCI Benner and Mark White. Mr. White?
So you're going to need to unmute Benner Township. Try it again. We still can't hear you. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay. We can hear you now.
Before you get started in,
Thank you.
Before you get started in SCI Benner, I just want the record to reflect, it looks like we've been joined by Senator Street. Senator, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. We are about to take some testimony from SCI Benner from Mark White.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to participate with this commission. This commentary is being presented on behalf of the many incarcerated individuals who are serious about making positive changes in their lives while in prison in an effort to successfully gain their freedom and to complete the parole process. My name is Mark White. I'm an inmate at SCI Benner. I'm a mentor and peer educator in the treatment services department here. Of the many important responsibilities that I have as a peer educator, one is to assist individuals that are nearing their minimum sentences to successfully complete the mandatory treatment programs according to the needs. I present to them an alternative perspective of the program curriculum by sharing past personal experiences as examples of what not to do in an attempt to recognize and change negative behaviors to help minimize reoffending in the future. I encourage the men to use their sentences to prepare for the challenges that they will encounter as they attempt to re-enter society. There are many different challenges that an individual leaving prison on parole will have to overcome, many of whom believe that the greatest challenges while on parole will be due to a certain racial identification or socioeconomic status. However, many ex-offenders are often labeled as being lazy, untrustworthy, manipulative, criminal-thinking individuals who are always, quote unquote, looking for an easy way out, which places them in a position of having to face an even tougher battle while trying to reintegrate back into society. Many of those individuals are mothers and fathers, wives and husbands who want nothing more than to leave prison with the skills and ability to provide for themselves and their families. Some are not given that opportunity because of such labels or due to an identification as violent or a threat to the community by an analysis-based determination by the board suggesting that there's a likelihood to recidivate if released. This places the inmate at an extreme disadvantage that most times are impossible to overcome. Many of the participants of the treatment programs lack the common knowledge of how to live a pro-social lifestyle outside of prison, a high percentage of which have never maintained gainful employment in their lives due to a lack of basic education. The inability to read or write can act as a hindrance of being able to find honest jobs and to live right in the eyes of the law. In the 6 years that I've been employed as a peer educator here, I've witnessed the sad truth that in order for some to be able to live a life that's within the lines of societal norms, it has to become a learned behavior, which can only be achieved through education and constant guidance. For many people exiting prison, there are often two completely different realities of society within the same geographical location. One in which everyone has the same opportunities available to them and all can be had if they simply met the, certain requirements and applied the necessary work ethic. And the other where a person's cultural differences and past criminal history act as identifiers of eventual failure and repeated criminal behavior. There's a percentage that have developed the belief that despite their greatest efforts, a life of profound and permanent bondage for themselves and their families, even while on the outsides of the gates of the prison, is the only conclusion of their efforts. What we have here is an opportunity to focus on doing something tangible that could lead to lowering the recidivism rate across the state of Pennsylvania. I am asking that this assembly consider creating an initiative that will begin properly preparing the countless number of parolees that are leaving institutions across the state and immediately begin to struggle to gain traction while attempting to reenter society. This is the opportunity to use this platform to bring awareness to something that the whole of society can benefit from. As written in the proposed state parole guidelines, the parole board has the discretionary authority to deviate from the recommended guidelines when there are substantial individual factors warranting deviation. I am asking that there be corrective measures included with this proposal that instructs the board or pre-parole interviewers to administer tools of preparation that places the inmate back within the recommended guidelines of the parole process to give that individual a more positive outcome at the next scheduled parole interview. This can consist of, but not be limited to, 1, mandatory GED and vocational class enrollment, 2, mandatory reentry service programs for every inmate interested in parole, and 3, a more effective parole education class. The reentry services office offers courses such as victim impact and awareness, which can reduce re-victimization, character development, social etiquette, resume writing, mock interview, employment interviews, and housing, which enhances preparedness and a successful reintegration back into society, which is the overall goal. We believe that better educated and prepared parolees are less likely to reoffend if released, which leads to reduction of recidivism and overall public and victim safety. In closing, I would like to reiterate that there has never been a better opportunity for us to all do something substantial in the interest of public safety while allowing second chances to those who are really ready to change their lives and become productive members of society. Thank you for allowing me to participate and for your attention with this matter.
Mr. White, thank you very much. I got to tell you, that was terrific. I really appreciate those ideas for additional, really practical programming ideas to help reentry and to help reduce recidivism. So I appreciate the specific suggestions in that regard very much. Do any of the commission members have any questions or comments? All right. Well, hearing none, thank you, Mr. White. And we'll next move to Naeem Scruggs. Did I get that right? I'm sorry if I mispronounced it.
No, that's right.
Okay. All right, Mr. Scruggs, the floor is yours. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
One of my concerns is for number 2 on the commentary sheet, provide for due consideration to victim input. Most often the victim and or their family may be unforgiving and extremely vindictive and not only wants the inmate to never be paroled, wishing he or she be in prison the remainder of their life, but will often go out of their way making impassioned pleas for such. Although I do now understand victim awareness and the effect for such, the crime has on the victim and their family, emotionalism should not supersede rationale, logic, nor the ability for change. The law was not created nor designed on emotion, but logic. In reference to the provisions of Title 61, Pennsylvania Consolidated Statute 6102, related to the operation of the parole system, provisions number 3 reads in part, assist in fair administration of justice by ensuring the custody, control, and treatment of parole offenders. Oftentimes, and there are numerous stories about insensitive and overly regimental for the least little thing. Most times, warning signs precede violation due to attitudes and manner of speech. A system similar to the DOC's grievance procedure need be instituted to unbiasedly investigate any and all complaints without retaliation. Otherwise, the inmate is victimized solely based on human feelings, which puts the inmate not only in prison, but for an amount of time, but also destroy any progress they have made. When an inmate gets denied parole, oftentimes for the very same reason and rationale such as nature of crime committed, which are factors that no matter how much we wish would never change under Title 37 PA Administrative Relief Review before seeking judicial review. Appealing to the Commonwealth Court in Harrisburg, however, this alleged avenue or review system is hampered or prejudiced by 2 factors. One, consistently, the parole board replied to the request for administrative release is, quote, please be advised the Board of Probation and Parole does not have to consider an application for parole within a 12-month period. See King versus Pennsylvania Board of Parole and Probation. This appears to be a contradictory rationale when considering the inmate is not applying for parole since he or she never made parole in the first instance, but requesting an administrative review of the denial of parole. 2, more often than not, the parole board fails and refuses to even respond to the timely request for administrative review since there is no stated time limitation for the reply. This tactic prejudices the field the inmate is attempting to revive lapsed appeal rights. In other words, he failed to either appeal the parole board or didn't do it in time. Either a new system need to be put in place addressing this problem, or the realistic rules and procedures need to be instituted to correct the ones that's already in place. That's all I have.
All right, Mr. Scruggs, thank you very much, and thank you for highlighting that timeline issue. We'll be happy to take a closer look at that and ensure that people are given a meaningful opportunity to be heard. Do any of the commission members have any questions or comments? All right. Well, I think that completes the testimony from SCI Banner. Thank you, gentlemen, for your testimony. We very much appreciate you taking the time this morning to help share some thoughts and insights with us. And we'll move to SCI Fayette.
Great, Fayette, you should be able to unmute on your side.
And we'll start with William Allen. Mr. Allen, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us this morning.
We can't hear you yet. You'll need to unmute. Okay, we should be able to hear you now.
All right, thank you for having us. Good morning. On behalf of all of those who have had the opportunity to testify before you here today, and those we have been chosen to represent, I sincerely thank you for allowing our voices to be heard during this process. In so many cases, decisions are made that will affect a group of people, but because there are no names, faces, or voices to put to it, it dehumanizes them, especially with negative labels such as inmate and convict. My name is William, and as a convicted parole violator myself, this is a topic I find of great importance. However, just because I'm a convicted parole violator doesn't mean that I cannot understand or appreciate the enormity of the Commission's tasks and their stances when it comes to public safety. As with a number of people I've met while inside of these walls and fences, I was a victim of violence and the effects of drugs well before I ever became a perpetrator. And I can clearly recall how I and those around me were, and in some cases still are, affected by all of it. I say that to say that we all play a part in the criminal reform process. You all come up with policies geared towards helping keep society safe, and we must mature, reform, and educate ourselves in order to do our part to help eliminate or reduce victims, crimes, and the perpetrators in the future. We were asked for our views on the proposed guidelines, and after speaking with a number of people throughout the institution, as you may imagine, there were those who complained about every measure proposed. Then there were those who felt like we were wasting our time being involved with this. And there were even those who would like to do away with the Board of Probation and Parole altogether. Of course, most of this could be coming from a group of us who may not have had the most successful interactions with the board and who may place the blame for past failures squarely on the shoulders of others. But then again, there were those of us who take accountability for our poor decisions, and the more level-headed individuals I spoke with saw this as a real opportunity to have some of our concerns addressed. One point of concern brought up consistency regarding convicted parole violators was how the same factors that were taken into account during the sentencing process to enhance a defendant's sentence could then turn around and be used to enhance their sanction with parole. It feels as if this could be somewhat a form of double jeopardy. We understand that the point of these proposed guidelines is to serve as a deterrent to prevent future parolees from violating or reoffending, and at times firmness may be more appropriate than gentleness. But when the determining factor on how much time one serves is not handled with a consistent criteria, it gives too much discretion to the hearing examiners, especially in circumstances in which guidelines can be deviated from. Which leads us to another area of concern. We would like to have greater clarification as to what aggravating and mitigating circumstances will determine when and how the board will deviate from the proposed guidelines. We understand that in those instances, the board will have to submit a contemporaneous written statement of the reason for the deviation to the commission. But we believe the ones affected most by the deviation should have the opportunity to review those documents as well. Also, something of great concern in regards to convicted parole violators was that we would like to have a better understanding as to what exactly constitutes aggravating and mitigating circumstances when determining whether or not a person's time at liberty is forfeited. Some believe that the court's sentencing structure should never be changed regardless of a new conviction. Others believe there should be only a partial time forfeiture for those who were in compliance with their stipulations for the majority of their time at liberty. We're humbly asking the commission and the board to consider if it is truly just for those who actually put sincere effort into changing their lives and contributing to society for years to then err, lose it all, and be punished harsher than those who never even attempt to rehabilitate themselves. By no means is it my intention to come across as confrontational, and I hope I'm not viewed as such. It's just that when the decisions are being made and months, even years of a person's life hangs in the balance on behalf of all of those who strive to rehabilitate and redeem themselves, and also on the behalf of our loved ones, it truly would be appreciated if we could be looked at as the individuals we are. We understand that the safety of the public will always be paramount in the decision-making process, and when one of us messes up, it could affect us all. I would just like the board and the commission to recognize that although the negative actions of our past can serve as indicators of one's chances of recidivism in the future, all of the positive actions of our past and presence can also serve as indicators of our chances to succeed in the future as well. Thank you all again for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. I didn't find your comments to be confrontational at all. I appreciate your insights and your thoughts there, and frankly agree with you that those who have worked hard to to better themselves and accept responsibility and set themselves up for success down the road should be treated more favorably than those who haven't. No question about it. So I certainly appreciate those remarks. Do any of the commission members have any comments or questions for Mr. Allen? All right. Mr. Allen, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We'll move on to...
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, of course. We'll move on to Curtis Terrain. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Mr. Terrain?
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
First off, I would like to thank everyone involved for putting this together and for the opportunity to participate in these proceedings. Although I am the one addressing you, these statements are not just a representation of my opinion, but the opinions of incarcerated men from different backgrounds and cultures. Some have been technical parole violators and some have been convicted parole violators. Most have been men headed to the parole board after receiving a parole hit that did not really specify why they received the denial or what to do to change the outcome the next time. I have been both a technical parole violator and a convicted parole violator. These are not facts that I am proud of, nor are they badges of honor in this institution. Truthfully speaking, the men and women in prison frown upon these who have squandered away opportunities to be with loved ones or build legacies. Longer or lengthy sentences have not been proven to change anything but the age of the individual coming home, which can shorten the opportunities to become prosperous or productive members of society and retard the ability to adapt to a rapid moving community. Although keeping someone locked away for longer periods of time for violations looks serious on paper, I believe assembly line sentencing practices do not work because people are custom made. I make no excuses for the crimes committed by myself or anyone else, and I believe that time with positive education that supplies a reason to want to be better than your circumstance can change a person's way of thinking and in turn their life. The details given on the packet look great on paper. Simply put, if someone is granted parole and they violate for a technical reason, they are given a violation for a period of time and sent home. The same goes for a convicted technical parole violator, except he or she has to do a parole hit first based off a new point system, which becomes more harsh as the violations accrue. As we have all read these packages, you will notice that these facts are repeated, and I agree with the necessity of a system that will not tolerate threats to the public, nor disregarding the rules and regulations that got you paroled in the first place. No one wants to live in a society where their loved ones aren't safe, no matter where you're from. However, there's no point to punish if the punishment doesn't alleviate the problem of recidivism. There should be more stringent training before and after parole. Training on how to succeed and how to fail are important and may even prevent a point system from ever having to go into effect. I believe transparency is necessary from the beginning of sentencing to the end. When everything is done to the sentencing judge's specifications and beyond in some cases, it is disheartening to find out you were denied not based off your performance, but because you didn't express yourself well enough during your interview. Since interviewing skills are necessary to be paroled, I believe that there should be some kind of class or interview course that teaches men and women how to deal with being in one. Some men and women were never taught how to express themselves, and this would be no different than a future job interview. That parole is a privilege and not a right is a confusing concept. From the beginning of our sentence, we are told in court by the district attorney, the sentencing judge, and our defense attorneys that when we sign these guilty plea colloquies, which is a contract agreement between all three parties, that we will be paroled upon the completion of our minimum sentences in prison. It is not stated to us in a state of uncertainty. It is simply put in that language, which leaves us to believe that when the judge sentences us to our time, as long as we don't involve ourselves in any new cases and follow the rules and regulations of the DOC, we will come home. Once we come upstate into DOC custody, we are told differently. And now we are told that our parole is based off of a point system that can punish you for past offenses that no one can erase or control. As you may have already reached the lowest level that the DOC can give you, and you may have already finished every program recommended by the unit team in the institution who has known you and worked with you for a number of years, only to receive a parole denial based on vague and obscure reasoning. Men have been given parole hits for things such as the district attorney felt he shouldn't come home. This individual has not seen the efforts that this man or woman has put in to come back into society, and yet the men I've spoken to feel if they, the district attorney, superseded the sentencing judge and the staff in the institution who recommended them for parole. This is extremely discouraging and disheartening for family members and employers that might have things set up for the parolees to succeed in society. If the idea of giving someone more time for a violation is to change the individual for the better, then there has to be something for them to change into. Giving someone a parole denial with nothing attached that will honestly help them grow forward is not only cruel, but it's a waste of taxpayers' money and bed space. If a person comes back to prison for a technical violation or a criminal technical violation, and we just keep them in a convict closet in the hopes that they will age their way out of criminal behavior, then everyone loses. Obviously, they were not ready for society with the tools they had when they left, so longer lengths of time in prison didn't help. I believe people need to be educated and tested before they leave. Adult basic education and vocational classes should be mandatory with release, tied to completion of classes, and they should be graded as life would grade us. This is not about keeping people in jail. It's about keeping them out and keeping them productive and positive. In this place, we're labeled inmate, convict, or prisoner. But before and after this is over, we are mothers, we're fathers, we're sisters, we're brothers, we're husbands, wives, and grandparents. These prominent titles will also be attached to one most pertinent to this meeting, and that is neighbor. If we're not properly educated and tested before we leave, then we're being punished even though we are being released. And too many of us will be doing life in prison on the installment plan. Transparency is not one-sided. I understand that we have to be able to realize that there has to be complete transformation in our mind as prisoners and or parolees to see that coming back to prison isn't an option for us if we are serious. We have to want to change to avoid these point systems and other ways implemented to keep us inside. We have to want to change before any can begin. With that being said, it's not just up to the individual, but up to the staff, the teachers, and their peers to help someone who wants to become positive and stay that way. Giving someone tools has no point if they're not properly taught and tested on how to use them. Of course, you will have some who refuse to give themselves a chance. I ask that you not fault the many for the few. Education is how we overcome recidivism, not more years trying to figure out where we went wrong. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the insightful testimony there, Mr. Terrain. Do any...
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. Do any commission members have any comments or questions for Mr. Terrain?
I do. Go ahead, Senator.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that one, I appreciate the candor with which the gentleman expressed the frustration that inmates can have, and it is helpful to understand the psychology that if we're going to have a redemptive effect, there needs to be a system where there's a clear set of there's a clear path to parole that inmates can understand, because that both will help in terms of the human development, but also it helps in terms of a system of rewards and punishments inside the institution, where you know that if you follow the instructions that are given to you, there's something at the end of the line in terms of your coming home. And so I think it's worth noting that your testimony yields that not only will it help people become better citizens on the outside, which is a goal for all of us, but also helps maintain order while people are on the inside. So I thank you for the testimony, and I thank you for the insight.
Thank you for
Senator.
listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator. DA Sunday?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you for your thoughtful testimony. I thought it was very well reasoned, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The second thing is, you mentioned education is how we overcome recidivism. What are some examples of the types of programs or education that you would like to see that is currently not being offered?
As myself being a convicted parole violator and a technical violator, I have done over 20 years in prison because of my own stupidity and because I didn't know how to fail properly. We are taught that you have to succeed, here, in order for you to become productive. We talk to our family members on the phone. They listen to our productivity. Every year we have a unit team that assesses our productivity, but we're not taught what happens when you fail. And that is one of the main things that takes place on the street. And it's one of the main reasons for recidivism. What I mean by that is what happens when your back is against the wall, when you don't get the job that you're supposed to get, when you can't pay the $30 a month towards parole because you don't have the money, or when you're having issues at home that you can't, you're having issues at home that you can't really discuss. I believe that there should be a course that teaches us how to get back on our feet. Most of us have a default program, as some of the brothers that I've heard earlier speak about. Most of our default program is to go back into the criminal scenario because we don't know any better, because of our neighborhoods. Name your cliche, whatever one. in order for you to change that, you have to change how a person thinks. So I believe that should be some kind of course that, now I'm not talking about just a thinking for a change course. I'm talking about the initial detail of what a person is supposed to do when something goes wrong. I'm gonna give you an example, and this is my own personal. I failed before on parole. My first thought was, well, I'm gonna go back and doing what I was doing because I was okay with that. And I failed. And I failed again. And it wasn't the point of me doing longer time because obviously that didn't help. What helped me was somebody pulled me aside and taught me how to change the way I think, how to change the default program. So it's no longer thinking about going out there to go hustle or go rob somebody or something of that nature, but to go out there and find out other avenues, even though you failed, a way to pick yourself back up and move forward. I also think that there should be some kind of course where you have peer assistant counselors in this prison. There should be some kind of course where we can get together in here and on the outside, and we can discuss as men how to get on our feet. Everybody has a you have a veterans course, you have AA meetings, you have NA meetings, but yet guys on the inside, on the outside, we don't have a place where we can actually discuss on how to become more productive. And I really think that that would help us move forward as well, because nobody understands prison unless you've really been here.
I appreciate that. That was very helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Terrain? All right, Mr. Terrain, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we'll move on to James King. Mr. King, the floor is yours. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with a few insights regarding these proposed state parole guidelines for 2021. I suggest when it comes to parole that the DOC staff recommendations hold more weight in general when deciding if an individual is prepared for parole. In most cases, the people who interact with the inmate most on a regular basis will know that inmate the best. A positive or negative recommendation from the people who have been around an inmate in many cases for many years will be very predictive in risk assessment, and they know the best about that person's preparedness category. Unit staff such as unit managers, counselors, correction officers, as well as work supervisors, teachers, psychology staff, medical staff, they can give the best insights as to whether an inmate is striving to change and be productive or not. I believe further and more intense programming is beneficial to someone newly paroled, and the staff from the DOC would also be better informed to make suggestions regarding programming a person needs once he is on parole. Further programming on parole is beneficial to reintegration, and a step-down program while in a halfway house would be a good means to reintegration. The old pre-release program by the DOC is a good example of further programming that I'm referring to. Regarding recommitment, if the time comes for recommitment to be addressed, I suggest the board stop reapplying a person's time at liberty to their max date. If someone's convicted of a new charge while on parole, no one can say definitively for what length of time that person was engaging in criminal behavior. I believe a person's reporting history should speak for the length of time they were parole compliant. For example, did they report on time, provide clean urines, hold a job, attend recommended programs, etc. I understand that some people are good at manipulating the system. However, criminals are not as smart as they think they are, or they wouldn't be in jail to begin with. And I'm sure their behavior leading up to their new charges is probably evident to the parole officers on the street. It's my opinion that taking someone's street time is only helping to add to overcrowding in the DOC, and lengthening someone's parole serves no rehabilitative purpose. In regard to recommitment, I believe it would be fair practice to calculate someone's recommitment time using the OGS of their new conviction. However, the practice of adding additional OGS points for subsequent violations is unnecessarily harsh, and the additional time required to be served by this practice serves no rehabilitative purpose. I understand the reasoning for increasing punishment for subsequent violations, but I suggest serving that additional time, or part of it, in an intensive rehabilitative environment geared toward reintegration. Additional punishment should not supersede rehabilitation, and adding OGS points to lengthen a repeat violator's incarceration will only help to keep the DOC overcrowded and will not help reduce recidivism. Consider a program that requires mandatory terms in a halfway house where nonviolent repeat offenders would attend programs based on their needs, such as NA, AA, grief counseling, learning job hunting skills, learning basic bank skills, learning basic life skills, learning to navigate transportation needs, gradually earn privileges like longer sign-outs and later curfews, and have help and support from positive people who are already productive citizens. I believe a program like that would go a long way in reducing recidivism and could be used in conjunction with electronic monitoring maybe to take the place of lengthy recommitment for nonviolent offenders. Unless a crime is of extraordinarily grievous nature, rehabilitation should always be more important than punishment, and adding ODS points to subsequent violations is only adding punishment. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the concrete suggestions. Any comments or questions from any of the commission members? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. King. We appreciate your testimony this morning, and I think I think that wraps it up for SCI Fayette, and so we'll move to SCI Muncie, and we'll start with Heather Lavelle.
Muncie, you'll need to unmute. Okay, we should be able to hear you now.
Okay.
Yep.
Good morning. Thank you, Representative Stevens and the commission members. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Heather Lavelle. I committed a violent crime and have been serving a life sentence at SCI Muncie since 2006. And while I'm not eligible for parole, I've spent many years working in reentry services and in the therapeutic community with women who are. When I thought about what I wanted to say today, my, I guess, biggest point is that women are different than men. We come to prison for different reasons. There's different treatments that are more effective for women, and why we violate and come back to prison is different. Women are just as capable of causing pain, but we're also just as capable of bringing healing in the communities as men. Every time a woman violates and has to come back to prison, generally we have to start all over and rebuild a life out there. We tend to be less independent and have lower self-esteem than men, so the challenge of recreating life becomes overwhelming and leads us back to the unhealthy relationships and unhealthy living conditions that generally brought us to prison in the first place. Preparedness has to be given serious consideration in the decision-making process. Women who are self-motivated and planning for their successful reentry into the community from the moment they arrive at Muncie have the greatest chances for success. On the other hand, those who do the bare minimum and only complete their prescriptive programming are the ones who come back. Sheer participation in a program doesn't prove anything. Time and again, I've seen women complete drug and alcohol programming when they have no intention of staying clean and sober. I view taking personal responsibility as the primary factor leading to preparedness and success. I'm not surprised that so many women are not prepared for the parole process and what comes next. Our criminal justice system is an adversarial system where people are encouraged to plead not guilty and to minimize their role in their crimes. Consequently, they arrive in prison not ready to take responsibility for their actions. And early on, nothing here encourages them to do so. Fear of negative consequences in the prison perpetuates this mentality. They never talk honestly about their crimes or what led them here. They don't know how to express their remorse or even how to get in touch with the feelings they have about their crimes. They haven't learned how to move away from denial and blaming into a place of taking personal responsibility where I believe real healing can begin. Then, 4 months prior to their release, they're put into programming where they dig up all their trauma and they're expected to be prepared, not only for the parole process, but to be successful in the community upon their release. Women are more receptive to treatment when they first arrive at the prison, before the negative realities of prison life overwhelm them. Offer programming up front and make it voluntary, not mandatory. Mandatory participants take away from the treatment experience of those who actually want the help. People have to want to change for any programming to be of benefit. Women need programming right away and then mentoring throughout their stay. That would give them time to practice and improve upon the skills they've learned. Women need trauma treatment, and trauma takes time to heal. We need education, life skills training, and skills to help us change our behavior, such as practicing honesty, cognitive behavioral therapy, and assertive communication. We need to learn positive, healthy coping skills so we don't return to the negative, destructive ones that led us to prison. These skills take time to nurture. It's not a good idea to dig up trauma in treatment and then immediately release women to an unstructured environment with the lure of escape through drugs and criminal behavior and no positive support. Release services should include mentoring, safe housing, education and job placement, structure, quality health care, and long-term ongoing treatment. As for preparedness, what we need to recognize is that while they may be fully prepared now, that preparedness can quickly go away once they're facing old triggers and temptations. Preparedness in prison needs to turn into support on the outside. Coming back to prison is not a deterrent. Life here is comfortable for them. Women need to be taught how to build a life outside of prison and encouraged to do the hard work it takes to get there. Ideally, as the women move through their sentence, the responsibilities placed upon them would start to look more like the realities they'll face when they leave, like working and paying bills, juggling multiple responsibilities, meeting deadlines, things of those nature. These guidelines appear to be an attempt to bring more transparency to the process, and I agree with that. The more women know what will be expected of them, the better. Victim input is considered in the decision-making process, and rightly so. Not only should their input be sought, but their needs should be considered. As much as services and treatments are made available to offenders, services need to be available to victims. We need to incorporate restorative justice practices when it comes to crime management in Pennsylvania. If everyone's needs were considered, victims, offenders, and community, recidivism could be significantly reduced. Offenders need to hear from their victims. Understanding the harm they caused could help them be more open to taking responsibility for their actions. And victims need to know that they've been heard. In conclusion, I'd like to comment on the Parole Board's consideration of research relating to the risk of recidivism. Nothing has proven to reduce recidivism more than time served and the age of the offender. The fact is, people do age out of crime. Violent offenders count for more than half of all the inmates in Pennsylvania. The solution to significantly reducing the prison population will have to include violent offenders. The recidivism rate for lifers is 1%. So on behalf of everyone serving life without parole, I implore you all to consider and support comprehensive sentencing reform that will allow a parole option for lifers. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your very, thank you for your very practical and thoughtful comments and suggestions. I think you made some great points there about the way different people handle these situations. So I think that's very helpful and insightful. Do any of the commission members have any thoughts or comments?
Chair.
Good morning, Todd. I have one.
Okay, we'll go with Representative McClinton and then Senator Street.
Okay, thank you, Todd. And thank you, Ms. Lavelle. This is State Rep Joanna McClinton. We've met a few times up at Muncie. It's great to see you today. And I appreciate all of your transparency and, of course, your leadership for the women who are at Muncie who need that peer support and the just the guidance that you're able to share with them on how to transition back home. I wanted to just ask you if you could give us a few more examples of the last part of what you shared, which is the fact that people do age out of crime. But in Pennsylvania, we've got the largest population of lifers. And of course, we have a significant portion that are over the age of 60. And you're familiar with the advocacy, myself, Senator Street, and many others do to, try to get legislation moving in the House and in the Senate to be able to have an opportunity for either medical parole or just to be able to remove some of the barriers for people who are not a threat and can in fact contribute to our society. So if you could just speak on that a little bit more. And finally, if you could talk about the interaction you have with the youthful offenders, because when I come up there, I usually meet with the teenagers who are serving adult sentences. Thank you.
Thank you, State Representative McClinton. Yeah, it is good to hear from you again. Examples of aging out of crime, we just had one of our women released on compassionate release, which basically means she's dying. You have to have a terminal diagnosis within a year to be able to get out of here. So I've watched women serve decades and decades who, it's heartbreaking because I know they're not a threat to public safety. And then it takes them to be dying to get released. Thankfully, Jessie was released, but she gets a lot of backlash from that release even still. So there's been a lot of negative commentary out in the public about her release. And it's hard to watch because I wonder, I think I've grown to the idea that there is a difference when women are released versus men, that women are held to a higher standard and aren't given as much of an opportunity to demonstrate that they are worthy of a second chance. We have several women here who are waiting to be heard by the Board of Pardons. And these are the women that instructed me when I got up here. I've been here for 15 years. And when I got here, these women had already served decades in prison and became my mentors and taught me how to change and how to become a responsible citizen. And I know that given the opportunity, they would be responsible citizens out there. They could teach. Women hold communities together. And these women held this community together all these many years and need to be given the opportunity to do that out there at home with their families. But they're held back. And I think that when you look at people's misconduct records, these women have decades and decades with no misconducts, no infractions. They're looked to by the administration here as the leaders in the community, and when the administration needs help implementing a program or finding mentors or anything along those lines, these are the women whose help and support they seek out. And I just believe that that should count for more when these decisions are being made of whether they should get a chance to go home and live out their older years with their families, basically. As for the youthful offenders, I'm happy to say that we don't have any right now. We haven't had anybody in the young adult offenders program in a couple of years, I think. Well, about a year. But there are a lot of women coming up, and I would say that I do see a change in the younger generation. The women that are coming in their early 20s have a different mentality than they had when I first got up here. So it takes more of us lifers and long-termers to reach out to them and try to get them to listen to our experience and guidance. But we do that informally on a daily basis up here. So there is a lot of interaction between the older inmates and the youth. And I've definitely seen, I read a lot of reports and statistics about aging out of crime, but I see it firsthand in my daily life experiences.
All right. Representative McClinton, did you have any other questions or any other comments? No? All right. Senator Street.
To thank you for your testimony and say that particularly the provisions about you start asking people to dredge up all of the harmful memories and traumas right before they're released, and then release them back when you have all the temptations to go to recidivate. It was insightful and something I don't think people really were thinking about, and it does point out that there probably needs to be a process to start providing some of that healing earlier in the process and not right when you're going to be released. That's something I quite frankly hadn't thought about until you mentioned it, but believe is really valuable information for us to consider. So thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Street. Good job.
Any other commission members have any comments or questions? All right. All right. Thank you, Ms. Lavelle. We'll move on to Angela Glenn, also at Muncie. Angela, thank you for joining us this morning, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Angela Glenn. A few months prior to being recommitted to Muncie as a convicted parole violator in 2018, I was invited to perform my song, I Am Somebody, as an example that felons can be successful. This conference from women leading their roles in corrections was held at Graterford. And up until that point, I graduated truck school, received my Class A commercial driver's license, and went on to receive employment as a ready-mix concrete truck driver. My most prideful accomplishment was being a grandmother to a beautiful baby girl. She was my joy. At the time, I was out on parole for 4 years. I was able to overcome a lot of hardships and adversity while on parole as well. That fast, my world came crashing in, and all of my cries for understanding went unheard. I was back to being just a number, OQ 3494. My gravity score for my past criminal history left me with an offer of nothing less than 5 to 10 years. The fact that I hadn't had a felony in over 10 years and had made evident change had held no merit. My past had come back to bite me hard. I felt so defeated and alone. My sentencing judge ended up taking into consideration the gray areas that the prosecution wasn't willing to see. God had softened his heart. I just knew that I would be reunited with my family, but I wasn't. Parole's decision was to recommit for 24 months, along with taking 4 years, 11 months, and 22 days of my hard-earned street time. Although I understand how the decision to recommit is deemed necessary in some instances, choosing that option and for how long needs more transparency when making the decision to do so or not. Our gravity score is being used not only at sentencing, but also as a tool to find a recommitment range is very excessive. It's heartrending to know that, as bad as this experience was for me, it could have been worse had these new guidelines been in effect. My positive street time should not have counted against my maximum sentence. Time when I had no violations, when I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, obeying the law should not be used to add time to my sentence. Only the time from the actual violation on should have counted. We need to have the opportunity to earn credit off our gravity score and our max when we are doing well. Then the trauma of the violation sentence will be lessened and we can continue to build on the good work that we're doing in our communities. My actions placed me in a situation that I had to take ownership for. I needed to be held accountable. With that being said, have any of you have done what I did, it would have been considered participating in a recreational activity. So yes, something still felt wrong. The punishment felt too extreme. Where was the median? Justice felt one-sided. Throughout this whole process, I asked myself what I could have done different and what I will do different. Taking on this mindset allowed a fundamental change to happen within me and allow God to work through me. I challenge you all to do the same. While revising and making adjustments to the recommitment ranges, guidelines, and new policies, I ask that you consider this. Bridge the gap, and in making this connection, find the appropriate correction. While reading the Daily Bread today, the topic was on kind correction. It said, correction is an example of God's mercy. May our love and concern for the well-being of others compel us to speak and act in ways that He can use to bring that person back. That process of believing and thinking was embedded in me from an early age. My mother set that foundation. I wouldn't have been able to have hope without faith in or trust. Because of this, I always had something to look forward to. With that being said, the reality is a lot of parolees or offenders do not have faith in or trust the system. Most forms of correction in their lives have been harsh or unkind. These constant forms of correction can be very defeating and immobilize one's progress and growth rather than help or reform. If the person has no groundings in a person's experience, the person may literally not perceive it at all. I'm hopeful that my experience while on parole will give a broader perspective in an area that may have been overlooked when analyzing, correcting, and or finding the solution with the same objective. The provision of adequate supervision of the offender while protecting the public, the opportunity for the offender to become a useful member of society, and the diversion of appropriate offenders from prison. I want to thank everyone involved for giving me the opportunity to finally be heard. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Angela. I had just a quick question for you, and I meant to ask this of one of the gentlemen who spoke earlier, and now, of course, I'm struggling to remember who it was that said it. But you had mentioned that somebody had helped you to change your perspective, your thinking about your conduct that landed you in prison. I think you had talked about how there was somebody who had helped you better understand the accountability there. Do you mind sharing who that was or where they were from? Whether they were from an organization or were they from the prison themselves? Was it a public defender or a counsel? I mean, do you mind sharing who that was? Like in general, who they were? I'm not looking for a name. I'm just trying to understand. Somebody else had talked about the import of changing your thinking and how somebody had helped them adjust their thinking. And I just wondered who that may have been.
Honestly, that came from more of a upbringing. When I was saying that my mother had embedded that foundation in me. Whereas though some parolees and offenders didn't have what I had growing up. And the reality is what I was able to see, some may not be able to see, and we need something that allows us to see that our actions build our character, more of a character course. Me personally, that was from my foundation of just being raised in church. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's helpful. I appreciate that. So what you're saying is that was a foundation that sort of predated the conduct, and you were able to reflect back on that as you work through. Okay. Do any of the other commission members have any questions or comments? Senator Street, go ahead.
Yep, just wanted to thank the young lady for her testimony, and also point out that certainly there are many of us who agree and are looking at issues around technical violations and what appropriate when and how, to what extent it's appropriate to recommit. And your testimony was helpful not only for this context, but also some of the legislative context that we're considering in a bipartisan way in the Senate, and I believe they'll soon be considering it. I think we may have already sent the legislation over to the House from in the form of SB 14.
Yeah, just to follow up on that quickly, I appreciated your commentary about the prior record score as well. That is another area that we're working on at the commission, trying to address sort of. I think you had mentioned that you had a rather old criminal episode that was impacting your guidelines, and that's something that we have heard and we are working on diligently to address. So I appreciate you highlighting that as well. DA Sunday, go ahead.
I want to thank you for your testimony. I thought it was thoughtful and specific, and it was very enlightening in a lot of different ways. One of the questions I have is, we spend a lot of time talking about recidivism, and from my side being a DA, we talk a lot about ensuring, obviously, community safety, public safety, and things of that nature. What programming would you like to see exist that currently does not, that you think would help people adjust as they're going through the reentry process?
I don't necessarily know of a program, but I would love to see a liberal arts class. That's just my personal, like understanding true freedom, not just of the physical, but of your mind as well. Something with finding a person's strengths, more about transferable skills. Like, a lot of people don't even realize the strengths and the skills that they have and how they can utilize them in different areas in more than just one way. Like, say you have a hustling mentality, how you can use those skills to transfer into something else that could be used as positive and not illegal. So they would probably be the two areas.
Okay. Hey, that was really helpful. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from any of the commission members? All right. Thank you, Angela. I am really curious, and I think it would be helpful for me anyway. I think it was at SCI Fayette. It may have been Mr. Terrain that mentioned somebody had, maybe Mr. Terrain or Mr. Allen had mentioned that somebody had helped them change their thinking. Is that ringing a bell out there with anyone at Fayette? Because I am curious as to where that shift occurred, or who helped facilitate that shift. Because it seems like a number of our speakers have talked about the import of that type of change.
You should be able to unmute Fayette.
We can't hear you out in Fayette yet. It's also hard with these masks because we can't tell if lips are, oh, there we go. All right, I think you're off mute now.
Hello.
All right.
We can hear you.
Hello, this is Mr. Hello, this is Mr. Terrain, and we have a group of men that we get together. Most of the guys have life sentences. We get together and we talk about issues that are going on with men. We talk about things outside of the normal parameters of being in an institution. But what's most important is we teach the young and we teach each other how to pull ourselves up through all adversity, no matter what's going on. Although my particular group is Christian based, because that's my faith. The point of it is to help each other move forward. Also, I'm in the Inside Out program in this particular prison, we have college students that come here, and we discuss different things of how I was shown different ways of how to become successful without having to do the normal thing that I've been doing for what I thought was normal for so long. It gave me an opportunity and gave me a better insight of what actually goes on outside of the madness of my neighborhood. So I was privileged and I was blessed to be around individuals that actually cared about me to have me change my mindset. And because of that, I was able to give that out. Also, my unit team is kind of strict. I'm just gonna be real. Like there's certain things they want me to succeed, so they stay on me, and I appreciate that. I've been around teachers that have the ability to tell me when I'm doing something wrong. I ask a lot of questions. I know some guys have been around, some men and women have been around teachers who are just there for a check. I was blessed not to have that. I have teachers that actually cared about my well-being, and when I asked questions, if they didn't have the answer, then they went and got it. So what I'm saying is, in order for me to change the mindset, I had to be around people that helped me change that mindset. This is what I was talking about when I said staff, other inmates, and people in the community to help you overcome if you want to be successful. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. So it sounded like a lot of that came from within the institution itself. The DOC was providing,
yes,
either the programming or allowing students to come in, that thing. So that was great. All right, look, I appreciate it. I don't know if that prompted any comments or thoughts. Oh, I got someone from SCI Cole waving his hand. So go ahead, sir. Is that Mr. Morrison? Or Mr. Lee?
Oops. You'll need to unmute Cole Township. We can't hear you. Okay, you should be able to speak now.
One of the things I want to comment on as far as that's concerned, we have to understand we're in environments here. When you start talking about these prison environments, where it's hard for people to find spaces where we can be vulnerable. If you can't find a space to be vulnerable, where you can be honest about who you are as a human being, then it's kind of hard to reach inside somebody and help them with that transformation, help them with that change. So a part of what I hear you saying right now when you're talking about the mentoring program, I know in here, for instance, we have a program called Dare to Care. And we create a space where we allow young people and older people to come in and be vulnerable. In that space, now you get a chance to reach inside somebody and find out the things that's really affecting them. I heard someone talk about the trauma earlier. A lot of us who are incarcerated human beings have been deeply traumatized. If you find that space where somebody can release that and you can really have an honest discussion with them, then that's when that change takes place. We need spaces like that in every institution where people can be vulnerable, where they can be honest about who they are, rather than putting up these facades and these shields. That don't always exist and they're hard to find.
Hey, what, that is really helpful and very insightful. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have something to add?
That was
Not to cut you off. To add perspective to what Mr. Lee just said, I would like to tell you a quick story. When I was in prison, I believe it was 2000 and maybe 11 or 2012, I was at SCI Frackville, and I got into a fight, and I went into the hole. And when I was in the hole, I was maybe about 24 or something like that. This was in 2012. There was a guy next to me in the hole, and he was considered a gang member. I was talking to him, and I asked him, could I read a book? Did he have any books to read? And he said, what kind of books are you looking for? I said, an urban book or something of that magnitude. And he laughed at me. And I didn't understand why he laughed, but it sparked something inside of me. It sparked like a type of aggression. Why are you laughing? And when he laughed at me, he explained to me why he laughed. And he sent over a book called African Origins of Civilization by Sheikh Anti-Diet. And to make a short story shorter, it was through him laughing and explaining why he laughed that opened a different paradigm, a different perspective. And this kind of shocked an atom. And I started to look at things differently. I started to read different literature. I started to look at life different. I read a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, which teaches different things, different perspective, different ways of looking at stuff. And so I think, to just piggyback off of what everybody else is saying, if we had programs and we had sacred space where we could be vulnerable and we could talk with real men and real women about the things that we have gone through in our life, the things that have hurt us, the things that have caused us to be almost compromised and comprised and set down, I think that it would actually break us free. So that's all I have. Thank you.
And to add one more thing about the aging out of crime too. I'm a lifer myself, and I understand. I've been around a lot of people for a lot of years who have aged out of crime. You reach a certain point where you just don't have the criminal mentality no more. You reach a point where you start understanding that I have to change as a human being so that way, not only for myself, but for your family and your community. I see this happen a lot of times, but you have people like myself in here with life sentences, but I have countless human beings that I've helped grow and transform. But I can never experience my family myself because of my life sentence. So we do have a lot of human beings who have aged out of crime, who deserve a second chance to be home with their families and in their communities. But because of our sentence, that's not possible. Not because of our conduct, not because of who we are as human beings, but because of a sentence.
I certainly appreciate the, I appreciate it. And your comment about a place to be vulnerable and to address some of that trauma that you've experienced is certainly well taken. It's not the first time we've heard that, actually. There was a pretty powerful testimony we received. It was in Philadelphia, as a matter of fact, that was in Judge Tucker's courtroom, where we heard from somebody that it really hit me hard when, this individual, the first time he was really able to even talk about the trauma he experienced was well after he had already been sentenced for a horrific crime he committed, but which is really a shame, because had there been an intervention earlier, may have been able to protect and save him and the victim of his crime. So it's a shame. It's something we need to work on for sure. All right. I think that's all the testimony we have scheduled, Mark. I see you waving.
We can hear you, Mark.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. White wanted to make a comment.
I just wanted to bring to the attention of the commission that, we have a program here called Man to Man, and it's like a guidance program where we mentor each other. And what I wanted to say was, the backbone of the group is to change your thinking, which changes your behavior. And, we hold each other accountable to do the right thing and to do the things that will help you be successful outside of prison. And it's not just about having, I heard some of the gentlemen speak about having a specific space to mentor each other. We mentor each other just walking the yard. We mentor each other on the block. We mentor each other, going back and forth to child when we were able to do that before COVID-19. But, we realize that we have a responsibility to each other to help, we speak of the prison environment as a community, to help our community, to be a better place. And, I just wanted to, encourage the people who are participating that, you're responsible for who you're with, and you don't need a specific space to be an example of the right, someone who's doing the right thing. And, you know, I just wanted to bring that up.
Look, I certainly appreciate that perspective. All right, do any of the commission members have any other thoughts or comments? All right, and Mark,
Mr.
if
Chairman?
I'm correct, yeah?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention something when we heard testimony from Ms. Lavelle, she also attached to her testimony a couple of pages of specific recommendations to the proposals that are very helpful. But I did want to address one issue she raised so that it's a clarification for the record, and it had to do with the effective date of the parole guidelines. And I think the language may be a little confusing, but the intent is when the parole guidelines take effect, they take effect to any parole decisions from that date forward, not the date of the sentence. It's the date of the parole decision, so when a person hits their minimum term. So we'll look at that to make sure the language is clear, but it would apply whenever it takes effect. It would apply to any paroles from that date forward.
Okay, great. Thank you for providing that information. I think somebody, is it Mr. Allen from SCI Fayette? Is something you want to?
You'll need to unmute Fayette. We still can't hear you.
Still can't hear you.
Oh, now we should be able to. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to ask about was about we talked about consistency with the parole board. Me personally, I'm a convicted parole violator. I came back to prison in 2009. I was given a 2-year hit, which was the maximum sentence, the maximum sanction that could be given to me due to my new conviction. Upon completing that, I seen a parole agent who told me to serve out the remainder of my sentence, which was after 4 years of street time being taken. I was at 7 years at the time. After a year, I applied for parole. I seen him 6 months after that, which is like another year and a half I had done. And I was given a year hit. The next time I saw the same guy who gave me the 7-year hit, and I had enough, then he told me to serve the remainder of my sentence again, which was 5 years. The next time I saw parole, they gave me a year and a half hit because I applied for parole when they told me the max again, I applied for parole again, and I was given a year and a half hit. Upon completing that, I was turned over to my new sentence, which was a 5 to 10. But I had 8 years in at the time when I made it to my new sentence, and all of my green sheets came back. All of my decisions came back with the same answers, risk to the community, risk to the community. But I wasn't going back to the community. I was turning over to a new sentence. And I was just trying to bring up a point of, if we're gonna make these decisions, there needs to be some kind of consistency, because when one guy would see me and give me a 7-year hit, serve the remainder of your sentence out, and another person would give me a year hit, and then the next time I would see him, the guy would give me a 5-year hit, and there would be no change from this point to that point, except for I would have more time, good time, and I would have more institutional approval, but there was no consistency with what was being the criteria of judgment for parole. I just think that there needs to be more consistency, and there needs to be some kind of more stringent criteria when it comes to these things, if possible.
Okay. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. All right. I think that wraps up our hearing. And unless any of the commission members have anything else to add.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to say thank you very much to the people that testified. It's been so enlightening to me. Oftentimes, as a sentencing judge, I don't have the opportunity to see and hear people who are situated like you are, and so it just means so much to me to hear and understand and see the compassion that you now have in the testimony that you present. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge. Any other commission members have any closing comments or thoughts?
Good afternoon. Oh, it's still morning. Good morning again. I would like to reiterate on Judge Tucker's sentiments. This was a tremendously
Joanna, we lost you there. You're back on mute, I think.
Uh-oh, I'm back.
There we go. Gotcha.
It's profoundly impactful to hear from the men and women who are impacted by the policies that we're crafting as a commission. So thank you all for testifying. Thank you all for sharing as much as you could, and for also just being advocates, not only for yourselves, but for others similarly situated across the Commonwealth. And thank you to our chairman, our staff, and our executive director for coordinating this. Thank you all.
Senator Street?
Yep, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to thank everyone who participated. I will say the insight that each of you provided is extremely valuable. It is a perspective that is needed in our deliberations. And, you know, we take seriously your comments and look forward to trying to integrate them into what we're doing going forward. Thank you so much.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Again, thanks to the staff at the Department of Corrections for helping facilitate this. Thanks to everyone who testified, and certainly thanks to our staff as well, led by Mark and you know, the whole team to be able to put this together. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you for our next scheduled public hearing. Take care now. Thanks, everyone.